Part 82. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 811. Chapter 811 Letter of Severance. Here, these were all taken away by Xinying. Lingwei looked up at Fan Qinjiao in shock. Fan Qinjiao nodded, everything is correct, it's all in the hands of Big Sister. Lingwei was silent for a long time, and then said again, you said it was at Xinying's place. Fan Qinjiao, do you think I will really believe you? The silver was taken from Mu Yan. Unfortunately, my eldest brother happened to bump into me a few days ago. If my eldest aunt doesn't believe it, I can find anyone to ask. Even if my aunt doesn't believe Mu Yan and me, she will always. You have to trust your elder brother, right? Lingwei was silent again. So, is it true that Xinying took all the silver on this? Why didn't she see a penny? Fan Qinjiao could see Lingwei's thoughts clearly on his face. I heard from eldest sister that eldest sister-in-law is already planning a marriage for eldest sister. This sentence played right into Lingwei's wish. The son gives money every month, but how can the money be enough for the mother and daughter to wear gold and silver? She had no choice but to plan a good marriage for Xinying. That's right, the people we've been talking to these days all have wives and concubines or are older, but we can't help but think that they are rich. As long as they have money, they can live a good life. She also thinks about Xinying. But what does it mean that Xinying is carrying her behind her back and constantly pulling money into her own hand? The eldest sister has been a very independent person since she was a child. Of course her marriage must be in line with her wishes. I heard from Mu Yan that the eldest sister said she wanted to use the money to save a dowry for herself. I believe that from the eldest sister's perspective, as long as the eldest sister likes you, you will definitely be able to honor your eldest sister-in-law in the future. What this says? Lingwei felt that Fan Qinjiao was openly mocking her. However, Fan Qinjiao always had a faint smile on his face, and Lingwei couldn't find a reason even if he wanted to speak. No one knows better than her what kind of temperament her daughter has. Xinying has a lofty temperament. If she is really asked to find one, she will probably have to get married in her lifetime. So why did you come here today? Lingwei looked at Fan Qinjiao defensively. No matter how bad his daughter was, she would always be closer to him than this outsider. Fan Qinjiao smiled lightly and said, I'm here today to give money to my eldest sister-in-law. Lingwei, can you be so kind? The smile on Fan Qinjiao's face did not change, and he took out a small box from his arms. After opening it, there was a thick pile of banknotes inside, each worth 1,000 taels. Lingwei's eyes widened when she saw it. There were hundreds of banknotes in this box, which added up to hundreds of thousands taels. These are all for me. Of course Lingwei didn't want to believe Fan Qinjiao, but now that the neat banknotes were placed in front of her, she had to believe them even if she didn't want to. As long as my aunt gives me what I want, these banknotes will be my filial piety to my aunt. What? Ifir. What did you say? Lingwei didn't hear clearly. A letter of severance from the eldest sister-in-law who is willing to take the initiative to sever the relationship with the eldest brother, Fan Qinjiao explained patiently. At this moment, Lingwei couldn't laugh anymore. She knew that this Fan Qinjiao had no good intentions. You want me to never meet my son? Fan Qinjiao, you are really cruel. No wonder Fan Mansion kicked you mother and daughter out. In my opinion, a cruel little like you should being immersed in a pig cage. Lingwei's scream was sharp and harsh. It was Ninghan who was waiting at the door when he heard these words and rushed in. Our young lady is now the crown princess appointed by the emperor. How can you insult someone just because you say insults? If the emperor blames you, how many heads do you have? I can afford it. As soon as he heard that he was related to the royal family, he didn't dare to speak anymore, but his hateful eyes were fixed on Fan Qinjiao, and he wanted to cut Fan Qinjiao into pieces every minute to relieve his hatred. Fan Qinjiao signaled Ningguan to step back behind him, then looked at Ling Wei and said, "Some people think that family love is priceless, but everyone's life is different, and no one can empathize with it. Maybe in the eyes of some people, come on, a letter of renunciation can be exchanged for hundreds of thousands of taels, which is a very worthwhile thing." Ling Wei stared at Fan Qinjiao and remained silent. "When I was in the house, my eldest sister-in-law was always the best dressed. Now, even if she is not as good as before, she still pays great attention to her appearance. However, my eldest brother only earns 100 taels of silver in the agency every month. Brother Ren is living day by day. When I grow up, my aunt thinks, how many more years can my eldest brother's money be given?" Ling Wei gritted her teeth and said, "I am his mother. As long as he lives, he must support me." Fan Qinjiao smiled lightly and said, "That's right." But the next sentence suddenly changed the subject. "Grandpa and grandmother are getting older, and brother Ren is growing up. We sisters will eventually marry out of the family. As the eldest grandson of the Hua family, the eldest brother will naturally have to bear all these burdens in the future. It falls on the eldest brother's shoulders. It's really unclear how much the eldest brother can devote to his aunt at that time." This time, Ling Wei did not speak. She knew that her son cared about family affection, and this was what she had always been concerned about. Now she can hold on to her son's weakness because the Hua family doesn't completely need him. When the day comes that Fan Qinjiao said, she knows that her son will never abandon the Hua family. As for her, "I will also take care of it, but definitely not like now." I have to say that Fan Qinjiao's words really touched her most worried point. Fan Qinjiao was not in a hurry, just waiting quietly for Ling Wei to make a decision. Everyone has feelings, and she believes that even the eldest sister-in-law has feelings. It's just that for my eldest sister-in-law, compared with money, things like feelings are relatively low. "Is it better than Japanese paper?" Ling Wei said after some time. Fan Qinjiao laughed after hearing this, as expected. "Ningguan, bring over the prepared pen, ink, paper, and inkstone." "Yes, miss." Not long after, Fan Qinjiao walked out of the house with the letter of severance written by Ling Wei. Getting on the carriage, Fan Qinjiao handed the letter of separation to Ning Han, "Send it to the people in Fengtian Mansion." Ningguan was stunned. "Why don't you find Mr. Sun?" "Sometimes, things can be done more easily with acquaintances than with strangers." Sun Che is not only familiar to her, but also to her brother. If he really wants Sun Che to handle this matter, he will be tied up. "Miss, if we really arrest Miss Xinying, will the young master hold a grudge?" Ningguan was worried that her young lady would be thankless for her efforts. "If it had been a few days ago, my brother might have done it. But now, no more." If Xinying's persistent stalking and threatening death only made her brother's pain worse, then this letter of renunciation was a fatal blow to my brother. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 812. Chapter 812, Ordered to arrest people. Fan Qinjiao was worried about the fifth prince, so he asked Ningguan to send him to the military and horse division first. After Ningguan and the other ladies got off the carriage, they went straight to Fengtian Mansion. Fengtian Fuyan looked at the book of severance in his hand and didn't know what to say. "I have seen cruel children, but I have never seen such a cruel mother." The severity books were all obtained, and Ningguan was going to threaten Hua Fengning to the silver. Feng Tianfuyin naturally couldn't sit at the sight of it. In the end, I really saw Xinying sitting in the carriage, holding a dagger and forcing it on her neck to kill her. Fengtian Prefecture Yin were all shocked. Ningguan quickly reminded, "Hurry up and arrest them. Didn't you see that Miss Xinying is threatening my eldest young master?" Feng Tianfuyin. Originally, the mother who wrote the letter of renunciation was terrible enough, but I didn't expect that this younger sister would go even further. Is this thing also inherited? Fengtian Prefecture Yin did not know Hua Fenning, but he was also a person of flesh and blood. Inexplicably, he sympathized with Hua Fenning's experience. In addition, he knew that Ning'an was the maid next to the princess, so he was more than sympathetic to Hua Fenning. Coupled with sympathy, he ordered the arrest almost without saying a word. It was Xinying who was crying and wiping away her tears in the carriage. She was frightened when she saw the government servants who suddenly rushed in. However, the Yamen officials didn't care about the situation and acted businesslike when ordered to arrest people. Hua Fenning naturally disagreed, and as a result, he was slapped in the face by the letter of renunciation in the hand of Fengtian Fuyan. Fengtian Prefecture Yin looked at Hua Fenning's devastated look at that moment, and also persuaded her with sincerity, what use would it be to keep a mother and sister like this? They would be too big to take up space in the house, otherwise Hua's family. If the eldest young master really can't think about it, why not go out and find a godmother? Fengtian Prefecture Yin firmly believes that even if he just pulls anyone from the street, he will be better than such a mother and daughter. Hua Fenning looked at the severance letter, but he didn't say anything. He just held Fengtian Fuyan's hand on his sleeve, and finally let it fall down weakly. Fengtian Fuyan is so pleased. With a look of relief, he patted Hua Fenning on the shoulder. People, always have to look forward. Let's not talk about whether there will definitely be surprises ahead, but there will definitely be no more troubles for your mother and sister. Xinying was really panicked when she saw Hua Fenning's silent expression. She struggled and rushed in front of Hua Fenning. She even warned Yin of Fengtian Prefecture that she was the sister of the current crown princess. Fengtian Fuyan. Without any precaution, spit foam was sprayed all over his face. Seeing Xinying refusing to cooperate, Fengtian Prefecture Yin laughed angrily. Your mother's disclaimer letter is still in my hands. Do you think you are innocent just because you are innocent? To put it bluntly, which normal person can threaten his brother with death? Have to. Don't cry here and wipe away your tears. Hurry up and follow me back to Fengtian Mansion. Otherwise, you will disturb the rest of the nearby people and scare people out of their wits. I will have to punish you for disturbing the security of the main city. After all, Xinying is just a girl who has not yet been married. How can she withstand Fengtian Fuyan's intimidation? His eyes widened and he fainted. When Ning'an came back, it was already half an hour later. When she returned to the yard, she told her everything that happened at the gate of Qingnanzai. Miss, my servants have told me everything. Having said this, I naturally said it to Hua Fenning and Mu Yan. After Xinying was taken away, Hua Fenning stood still and did not move. Mu Yan was also frightened and turned pale. Ning'an hid in the dark and observed for a long time. He was afraid that something would happen to these two people, so he told them everything. Fan Qinjiao nodded, go down and have a rest. Miss, the young master won't blame you, right? Ninghan said worriedly. It's okay. Fan Qinjiao smiled and shook his head. The eldest aunt's letter of disclaimer was sent to Fengtian Mansion, and Xinying was taken away. Even if the incident happened suddenly and my brother couldn't figure out what was going on, he would always try to figure it out after he calmed down. Rather than letting her brother guess, she would rather tell him. For the Hua family, neither Ling Wei nor Xinying has anything to do with them. Although my grandfather and grandmother valued family ties, they were also decisive people. It is precisely because of this that Ling Wei and Xinying chose to start with other people in the house when they were desperate. The road ahead is still so long, and my brother's life has just passed the beginning. Of course, Fan Qinjiao will not allow Xinying and Ling Wei to stay in his brother's body, constantly sucking up the happiness that should belong to his brother. Little Miss Mu Yan is here, and he walked in and said. Fan Qinjiao originally planned to let Mu Yan come in, but when he stood up, he was warmed by the wind blowing through the window lattice. After thinking about it, he simply walked out on his own initiative. The days will get hotter and hotter, and such peaceful nights will not always be available. In the yard, Mu Yan shed tears as soon as she saw third sister. Fan Kinjao smiled and walked over and said, "You don't sleep at night, so you come to me to shed tears." Mu Yan bit her lip and shook her head. "Of course not." After the third sister found out about this matter, she did not find her first, but took action behind her back. Finally, she asked people from Fengtian Mansion to take away the eldest sister. There was no plan at all. Challenging her. She knew that the third sister did not blame her. No matter what the reason was, it was wrong for her to steal King Nanzai's money. "Third sister, I'm sorry, I let you down." Third sister gave King Nanzai to her because she believed in her, but she did such a thing. Fan Kinjao looked at Mu Yan and said, "Then why didn't you tell me from the beginning? Everything big or small in the house has to trouble third sister. My mother said that third sister is actually not much older than us sisters, but she can bear more than anyone else. I am getting engaged this year. Now, I have grown up, and I also want to help the third sister to share some things. If that's the case, what's your fault?" Mu Yan was stunned. How could she be right? Fan Kinjao smiled and said, "Since I gave King Nanzai to you, it is yours. If you use your money to help me avoid disasters, aren't you helping me share the burden? Although this matter can't be handled, it's somewhat disgraceful, but in this world, what things are really clean? Regardless of whether it's glorious or not, as long as your starting point is good, you have nothing to disappoint. On the contrary, I still want it. Proud of you. Muan. Can you still think about this kind of thing? Remember, when you encounter something in the future, don't just look at the surface. If you are blindly led by others, it is a compromise rather than a way to deal with the matter. If you want to solve a matter, you must have your own opinions, and fundamentally finding the problem is the key to solving it." Mu Yan nodded. After what happened this time, she really had a long memory. After Fan Kinjao sent Mu Yan away, he did not return to the house. Instead, he asked Aunt He to take out the cloak that had been prepared, and went straight out of the mansion and got on the carriage heading to Fengtian Mansion. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 813. Chapter 813, Take the money and get out of here. Of course Fengtian Prefecture Yin knew that Xinying would not stay in Fengtian Prefecture for too long, and besides, it was just a blackmail. Even if he wanted to, he could not hold him for long, but when he heard that the Crown Princess came to the door in person, he was still fooled. One jump. Why is the Crown Princess here in person? Fengtian Prefecture Yin, who hurried out to greet her, put a smile on his face when he saw Fan Kinjao. Fan Kinjao said with a smile, "Today's affairs have already troubled Fengtian Prefecture Yin a lot. It should be a matter at home, but I have troubled Fengtian Prefecture Yin to take care of it. Let's settle the matter quickly so that Fengtian Prefecture Yin can have the energy to go busy with other things. After all, the main city has been uneasy recently." Hearing these words, Fengtian Prefecture Yin didn't know what to say, so he quickly stretched out his hand to invite people inside. It is so comforting to hear the words of the Crown Princess. Really, just for these words, he is willing to help with 100 things, not to mention one thing. Fan Kinjao followed Fengtian Fuyan as he walked toward the cell, and asked casually, "The people who caused trouble in the 15th main city are still not caught?" When Fengtian Prefecture Yin thought of that incident, he had a headache. To be honest, Princess, those thieves were too cunning. They broke up after the incident. The minister once wrote a note hoping that the emperor could close the city gate. Only in this way can we catch people better, but there has been no movement since I sent the Jizi, and the same goes for Wei Chen, alas. Hearing this, Fan Qingjie frowned unconsciously. At that time, seeing the delay in sealing the city gate, she thought it was due to Fengtian Mansion's dereliction of duty. From this point of view, it seemed that the emperor had been holding back. Could it be that the emperor was also frightened at the time and had no intention of reviewing the memorial? The steps inside are steep, princess, be careful. Feng Tianfuian's words interrupted Fan Qingjie's thoughts. Fan Qingjie raised his head and saw that he was already standing at the door of the iron prison. As the iron door of the iron prison was opened, Fan Qingjie calmed down his thoughts and stepped in. The iron prison in Fengtian Mansion is different from that in Dali Temple because they only hold small-time prisoners. Although some torture instruments can be seen on the surrounding walls, they are far different from those in Dali Temple. Fan Qingjie walked a few steps before he saw Xinying locked up in the cell. Xinying was really frightened. She huddled in the corner and trembled all over. Hearing the footsteps, Xinying suddenly raised her head and shouted, "Brother!" However, the moment she saw Fan Qingjie, all the joy on her face turned into resentment. Fan Qingjie didn't pay much attention to Xinying's eyes. He just leaned slightly and looked at Xinying through the wooden fence and said, "Now you know how to call me brother. When you were full of threats, you thought that that person was your brother." Fengtian Prefecture Yin saw that the crown princess was tired standing outside, so he quickly ordered the jailer to bring a chair and placed it behind the crown princess himself, and then he wisely withdrew. Xinying looked at Feng Tianfuyin's eagerness for Fan Qingjie, and the light in her eyes became even more hateful. "It's you, Fan Qingjie. You found someone to catch me here, right? Fan Qingjie, you don't deserve to die. Aren't you afraid of being struck by lightning if you do this?" Fan Qingjie held up her skirt and sat on the chair with a calm expression. "It is true that I asked Fengtian Mansion to come forward, but have you ever thought about it? How could Fengtian Mansion arrest people without my aunt's letter of renunciation?" Xinying was stunned. Fan Qingjie kindly reminded, "Without the aunt's letter of disclaimer, how you threatened your brother would be a family matter. Only if the letter of renouncement was taken in Fengtian Mansion and you had no relationship with your brother, your threats would be considered serious. It's extortion." Xinying's face changed drastically when she understood. "Fan Qingjie, you are talking nonsense." Fan Qingjie smiled. "If I were talking nonsense, eldest sister wouldn't be here now." Xinying trembled all over and turned pale. "Fan Qingjie, what method did you use to force my mother to agree to write a letter of renunciation? Why is it persecution? I gave my aunt hundreds of thousands of taels of silver. What did you say? I think my eldest sister-in-law is still counting banknotes in your little house where you hang bacon." Hearing this, Xinying's eyes widened in disbelief. If Fan Qingjie didn't come to the door in person, how would he know that there were bacon hanging in their yard? So, did Fan Qingjie really give money to his mother? "No, mother will not agree. You lied to me." Xinying kept shaking her head. "When you came to threaten Mu Yan, wasn't my aunt not aware of it? Now that she's holding the money and not telling you, I think it's reasonable." Fan Qingjie just tore it apart. Get rid of Xinying's self-deceptive disguise. Xinying's selfishness was completely inherited from Ling Wei. As the saying goes, like mother, like daughter. Don't Ling Wei know what writing that letter of severance means to Xinying, who is now threatening Mu Yan and Hua Fenning? How could you not know? But she knew it and wrote it anyway, obviously complaining that Xinying hid money behind her back. Selfish people will never know how to think about the other person. Whether it is Xinying or Ling Wei, when it comes to themselves, they will only put their own interests first. Xinying's eyes were burning with fire. "Fan Qingjie, what do you want?" Fan Qingjie smiled and said, "It's very simple. I'll let you out, and you and your aunt will leave the main city forever." Xinying didn't want to fulfill Fan Qingjie's wish. "What if I don't? That money, I gave it to my eldest sister-in-law, I have a way to get it back. As for you, as long as I let the people in Fengtian Mansion release the news that you are blackmailing your brothers and sisters, do you think any in-laws will dare to ask for you? Fan Qinjiao calmly distracted Zining. Of course, if you still want to come to Hua's house to cause trouble, and there is a letter of renunciation placed there by the eldest aunt, you will come to the door to cause trouble. By then, even if you don't worry about the prison sentence, if you sit tight, you won't be able to get out in 3 to 5 years. Hearing these words, Ziniying's eyes became even more angry. Fan Qinjiao, how dare you? Fan Qinjiao shrugged and looked at Ziniying in the cell. What do you think? Ziniying was confused when she heard this. If Fan Qinjiao didn't dare, how could her mother write a letter of renunciation? If Fan Qinjiao didn't dare, why would she be sitting here now? The more Ziniying thought about it, the angrier she became, and her eyes began to turn black. But she had to admit that what Fan Qinjiao said was true. This feeling of wanting to struggle but being unable to do so is driving Ziniying crazy. Fan Qinjiao didn't have time to sit here and waste time with Ziniying. She had already finished what she needed to say. Seeing that Ziniying was unwilling to speak, she got up and left. Ziniying was really panicked this time. Fan Qinjiao, you, stop. Fan Qinjiao turned around and looked at Ziniying silently. Ziniying was really reluctant, but she had to lower her head and said, let me out. Hearing this, Fan Qinjiao smiled with satisfaction. It would be great if it was like this earlier. Take the money and get out of here with your mother. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 814. Chapter 814. Even a stack for him is not too much. Hua Fengning didn't know until early the next morning that Ziniying had been released last night. After further inquiry, I heard from the Yamen servant that the crown princess was here in person. When Fengtian Prefecture Yin heard that Hua Fengning had arrived, he thought for a while and walked out in person. Looking at Hua Fengning's silent expression, he began to persuade him, young master of the Hua family, do you really think that the crown princess has worked hard for you? Don't know. Hua Fengning felt a pang in his heart. He didn't understand Qinjiao's painstaking efforts, but he just didn't know how to face it. Our main city is a place of crouching tigers, hidden dragons, and there are many relatives of the emperor. I should not say this. Once this person becomes famous, who is willing to look back? For example, the crown princess. Not to mention it's rare, but looking at the main city, no matter what methods the crown princess uses, she still has a good heart. Feng Tianfuyin really felt that he had dug it up, crushed it into pieces, and said everything that should be said and shouldn't be said. Is he willing to interfere? He is not full of food. The main problem is that what the crown princess did was so exciting. She was able to do so for her cousin, which made it seem cold-blooded for him not to participate. Really, if there is such a sister, a bunch of them would not be too much for him. Hua Fengning smiled when he saw Fengtian Prefecture Yin wanting to press his head and confess his mistake to Qinjiao. Thank you Fengtian Prefecture Yin for speaking out. I know what to do. As soon as Fengtian Prefecture Yin heard this, his eyes lit up. In that case, I wonder if the eldest young master of the Hua family can help me say a few good words in front of the crown princess. Hua Fengning. After coming out of Fengtian Mansion, Hua Fengning directly found a small house in the west of the city. It was still the same house in my memory, but it had long since been deserted. Surprisingly, Hua Fengning did not show any surprise or sadness at this. In fact, he had already known that the result would be like this, or in other words, he knew the nature of his mother and sister, but as the eldest son, he could not don't shoulder the responsibility of taking care of your mother and sister. Now that the person is gone, he feels a sense of relief. Outside the small house, a vendor selling beggars' chicken suddenly passed by. Hua Fengning smiled when he smelled the fragrant smell. He remembered that this was Qinjiao's favorite food when he was a child. Carrying the steaming beggar's chicken, Hua Fengning returned all the way to the western suburbs mansion. This time he didn't even hesitate and walked towards the yard where Fan Qinjiao was. At this time, Fan Qinjiao was mixing medicinal materials in the yard. She smelled a strong aroma of meat. When she looked back, she saw her brother striding towards her with a beggar's chicken. "We met just in time, and it's still warm." Hua Fengning smiled and raised the beggar's chicken in his hand. "Now in the main city, beggar chickens are rare," Fan Qinjiao said with a smile. "The yellow mud used to make beggar chickens is not ordinary yellow mud. Nowadays, pavilions and pavilions are being built in the main city. Although the yellow mud is cheap but hard to find." Hua Fengning saw that the weather was nice, so he made the mistake of sitting on the stone bench in the yard. Fan Qinjiao looked at his contented brother, and walked over with a smile and sat on the opposite side. The two brothers and sisters looked at each other, but Hua Fengning was afraid to look directly at them. Having a guilty conscience, Fan Qinjiao just laughed. "I heard from the young master of the Su family a few days ago that my brother's work in the agency is getting better and better. Now that the Su family's industry is expanding, they have plans to continue to open new shops, so this is I was thinking about whether my brother could start his own business. I thought it wouldn't be a big problem, so I agreed to help him first. Even if he felt it was inappropriate, he couldn't scold me." Hua Fengning was stunned. "But now the money I have on hand." Fan Qinjiao interrupted with a smile, "Brother doesn't need to worry about the money. The young master of the Su family has already negotiated with me. The money for the new bureau will be provided by the Su family. When the bureau opens in the future, my brother can take over the Su family for other freight. You only need to waive the fee when transporting Su's freight. The main city has the largest number of merchants in Ziliang, and the number of goods traded every year is even greater. The Su family's freight transportation is already famous in the main city. To put it bluntly, more than half of the merchants in the main city now believe in the Su family." Now Su Shaoxi asked him to take over the new agency. Not only did he still use the Su family's name, but he could also receive the goods privately. If this was really the case, he would be able to rely on the Su family to win over him in less than a year. To your own network. Once a person has a repeat customer, what does he want to do but he can't do it? What is the difference between this and giving money to him for free? Hua Fengning frowned. The young master of the Su family doesn't seem to be a person who can do business at a loss. Fan Qinjiao smiled and said, "It's not considered a loss. After all, the Su family doesn't charge any fees for taking goods." But the young master of the Su family still approves of his brother very much. Or it's okay to say that you don't agree with it. His sister was the first to plot against Tianyu. Even if it was his sister who suffered in the end, although I heard that she is still raising him on the bed, it was his sister who initiated the matter. Fan Qinjiao would not be able to settle the accounts later. But when she picked up Su Shaoxi's wool, there was still nothing she couldn't do. Su Shaoxi was helpless. If this matter were placed on anyone else, he would definitely want to get his money back with interest. But when he met Fan Qinjiao, he changed his mind to give it back with interest. The most important thing is, not only do you have to be recognized, but you also have to ask if you have gathered enough and do you want more? Hua Fengning certainly thinks this is feasible. He is already familiar with freight transportation. Although he is not familiar with all routes, most of them have already been opened. Since my brother agrees, just find the young master of the Su family directly when you have time. He is free these days. Hua Fengning saw her sister speaking so confidently. What else didn't she understand? With her sister's intelligence, she could have already guessed that he would agree, so she had paved all the roads for him in advance and waited for him to walk up. Otherwise, Su Shaoxi, who has always been busy with social activities, how could she be free by chance? Thinking of this, Hua Fengning felt even more guilty. Yesterday, he was still immersed in his own emotions and couldn't extricate himself. But on the other hand, Kinjao had already considered everything for him. Compared with Kinjao's overall view, he was really too petty. The matter between mother and sister. Hua Fengning had already gathered up her courage, but when the words finally came to her lips, she still found it so difficult to say them. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 815. Chapter 815. Let's kill two birds with one stone. Fan Kinjao looked at his brother's speechless look and continued with a smile, I did ask my aunt to write a letter of renunciation, but I also gave her hundreds of thousands of taels money. Brother, don't worry, those banknotes have long been exchanged for Tongxing Bank, and my aunt can exchange them in full no matter where she goes. As for my eldest sister, I think as long as my aunt has plenty of money, it should be I won't treat you badly, big sister. Zinning was brought about by Ling Wei after all. It would be a lie to say that she has no feelings. After the vacancy in money was satisfied, Ling Wei no longer plotted against Xi and Ying. After all, from now on, mother and daughter were dependent on each other. If Xi and Ying was really offended, who would be responsible for Ling Wei's old age in the future? Ling Wei is not stupid, he should understand this point. Hua Fengning looked at Fan Kinjao and suddenly remembered what Feng Tianfuyan said. Then he just smiled and said, I am truly blessed to have a sister like you. Fan Kinjao smiled. In fact, she wanted to say that it was her luck. A warm breeze blew through, bringing with it the aroma of beggar's chicken. Look at my memory, I'm too busy talking. Hurry up and try how this beggar's chicken tastes, Hua Fengning said, quickly pushing aside the yellow mud on it, and almost without hesitation pulled off a chicken leg and handed it over. Fan Kinjao. Fan Kinjao looked at the fragrant chicken legs in front of him and felt dazed for a while. Once upon a time, when she was following her mother in the village to make a living, her brother brought back a beggar's chicken as if it were a treasure, and handed her the first drumstick he pulled off. Time passes and the past reappears. It turns out that nothing has changed. After sending his brother away, Fan Kinjao carried the medicine box to the Bingma division as usual. Since Zhao Yi arrived, the fifth prince's pulse has obviously been beating more vigorously. Fan Kinjao calculated that in a few months, this person would wake up. With the passage of time, the people of the main city gradually downplayed the disaster at the 15th as May Day was approaching. The streets of the main city, which had been depressed for a long time, also became lively due to the festival. On the day before the May festival, Bailey Rong suddenly brought people into the palace to meet the saint. Soon, the court posted a notice and all the missing people were found. As soon as the news came out, the people who were busy preparing to celebrate the Dragon Boat Festival burst into cheers, many of which were mixed with reverence and praise for the third prince. As for Bailey, who was still in the two cities Fengming, naturally, wanted to be completely overshadowed by Bailey Wrongs. When Fan Kinjao heard the news, he frowned in disgust. It is true that there has not been any progress in the case of missing children in Fengcheng and Nanjing, but the people in the main city were indifferent to the affairs of the two cities a moment ago. Why did they suddenly think of comparing them when Bailey Wrongs was so beautiful? If Bailey Wrongs hadn't been inciting public opinion behind his back, how could the people in the main city be like this? Go and call Mu Yan. Fan Kinjao looked at Ninghan and ordered. Ninghan nodded and quickly went out to invite someone. Not long after, Mu Yan walked in and said, "Third sister. Tomorrow is the May Day. In the past, King Nanzai would directly launch new products. This year, I thought that while launching new products, I would randomly give away other goods from our usual shop. What do you think?" People in the main city responded to King Nanzai. Nangzai's new products are always accepted as ordered. In this way, many customers will save their money that they originally wanted to buy other products and wait for King Nanzai's new products to be tasted. In this way, ordinary products on weekdays are no longer available. The shipment volume has naturally been lowered. Even many old customers cannot recognize all the products of Kingnanzai, let alone try them. Muyan was originally worried about this matter, but after hearing Fan Kinjao's suggestion, he naturally nodded in agreement. I will go to the shop to inform Yu Luo and Peng Zheng. Fan Kinjao's suggestion was certainly not entirely for Kingnanzai's profit, but after thinking about it carefully, he still told Muyan, remember, the common products that come with each new product must not be repeated as much as possible. Muyan nodded, third sister, don't worry. Yu Luo and Peng Jing are both fast-working people. After hearing what Muyan said, they started to make preparations. As soon as Kingnanzai opened its doors on the May festival, they immediately launched the slogan of introducing new products to old ones. Although it was an old product, but after all, it's a gift, so no one cares about it too much. However, facing such attractive benefits, it has naturally increased people's desire to buy. Soon, the heroic deeds of the third prince and his army to find the missing people were captured on the beach by the news that Kingnanzai bought new products and gave ordinary products away. In the final analysis, people's attention will only be attracted when their own interests change. It was only after the common people used it that they discovered that the ordinary products of Kingnanzai can also achieve amazing results. In this way, the morning was still not over, but many customers turned around and came back to inquire about the ordinary products in the shop. Muyan, Yu Luo, and Peng Jing were so busy that they hit the back of their heads and their voices became hoarse. Bailey Rongs, who had not heard enough of the praises of the people, his face was as black as the bottom of a pot during the festival, and he no longer even thought about celebrating the festival. Compared to the insecurity in the third prince's mansion, the western suburb mansion is lively. It was noon when Hua Yuelian and Sun Che got off the carriage. Tao Yuxian, who had been waiting to hold her granddaughter in her arms, fell in love with her softly, and couldn't put it down. I had eaten and drank enough before today's love came, and now I am in a very good mood. Everyone I see is smiling with a pair of crescent eyes, but the smiles of the daughters-in-law in each room melt their hearts. The red envelopes are like the following. Like rain, one after another they were stuffed into the swaddled clothes. Fan Kinjao held his mother's arm and walked with everyone to the mansion. Unexpectedly, before he had taken a few steps, he heard that Fan Zhao had come to report, and Prince Heshuo and his wife came to visit with the young prince. Everyone quickly turned around and saw Prince Heshuo and his princess walking in, holding the hand of the young prince. The little prince, whom I haven't seen for a long time, is fair and tender, with a pair of dark eyes that are shining brightly. Although he can already walk on the ground, he still stumbles a little. Facing everyone in the Hua family, the young prince was a stranger. Only when he saw Fan Kinjao, he showed a familiar smile, stood firm in front of Fan Kinjao, and spoke in a decent manner. He said, Qing Chuan has met Ganja. Heshuo County Prince and his wife are Fan Kinjao's adopted father and mother, so there is nothing wrong with the young prince calling him God's sister instead. Fan Kinjao looked at Princess Heshuo County in surprise. Does the young prince have a name? End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 816. Chapter 816 Old Children and Young Children. The princess of Heshuo County smiled and said, some time ago, I brought Qing Chuan to the palace to see the world, and I happened to meet the emperor. The emperor saw King Chuan's affinity and gave him his name. The Qing Chuan belt is long and thin, and the carriages and horses will be idle. Although it is not as surging and magnificent as moving forward, it has an elegant atmosphere and clear hope. Although Fan Kinjao does not approve of the person sitting on the imperial chair, it is undeniable that the name is good. Touching the young prince's round head, Fan Kinjao handed over the red envelope that he had prepared. I was thinking of going over to see you later, but since you took the initiative, it saves me trouble. Prince Jingchuan looked at the red envelope but did not extend his hand. He blinked at Fan Kinjao with his big eyes. Princess Heshuo looked at Crown Prince Jingchuan and said with a smile, "Since my sister gave it to you, you can just take it. You just accepted someone else's things, and you will remember their kindness from now on. Do you understand?" Prince Jingchuan nodded ignorantly before taking the red envelope. "Thank you, sister." Fan Kinjao really saw that the little prince was so cute, so he bent down and picked him up. At this moment, Wu Qiuzao came over with Brother Ren. When he saw that Brother Ren was usually only kind to him, my little aunt actually fell in love with her, and she immediately started babbling in her mother's arms to protest. "Wu Qiuzao, at this young age, you are still competing for favor?" Seeing this, Crown Prince Jingchuan struggled out of Fan Kinjao's arms. "Sister, hold him, he is young. It's really rare for a little person to know how to be humble even though he can't even speak politely." Prince Heshuo stroked his beard and looked at my son. Hua Yaoding has always been an upright person, but now seeing his grandson being compared to others, he looked at little Ren Ji and puffed his beard and stared, saying, "Come down and walk by yourself. How can a man be rigid, on top of these trivial things?" Ren Ger was so young that he was frightened to tears by his grandfather's appearance. Seeing this, King Heshuo persuaded him, "The child is still young and will gradually get better in the future. Unlike our Qing Chuan who has been so sensible and obedient since he was a child, he doesn't even have the innocence of a child. Unless Hua Yaoding was deaf, he wouldn't have heard the full meaning of showing off. Since you are born sensible, you shouldn't waste your time. In my opinion, Prince Heshuo might as well send Prince Jingchuan away after the new year. Go to the barracks to practice. Stand up. Heshuo County Prince. Hua Yaoding, can't you afford it?" After all the years passed, Crown Prince Jingchuan was still only over 2 years old. Let a 2-year-old child enter and practice in the army. Is this something that a human being can do? Hua Yaoding took it for granted, a real man should work harder if he is able. "Why don't you send your grandson to the military camp? In my opinion, your grandson is quite suitable to work hard. This is natural. My grandson, Hua Yaoding, can't be any worse." "Okay, but this is what you said, don't go back on your word when the time comes. A man's words are hard to follow." Facing Hua Yaoding and Prince Heshuo, even Brother Lian Ren couldn't stop crying. Crown Prince Jingchuan even looked at his mother with a confused look on his face, completely unaware that he had been the fact that his own father was sold. The Princess of Heshuo County. I really want to dig a hole and bury the old one in my family. Is it embarrassing for a person who is still quarreling at his age to go out? Tao Yuxian looked at Princess Heshuo and smiled and said, "Men are childish by nature. Let's go in and sit down first." Princess Heshuo County nodded in complete agreement. This will disturb the old lady of the Hua family. The female relatives walked towards the flower hall one after another, but Brother Ren couldn't stay idle. Before he could enter the door, he was struggling to get off the ground. Seeing that Brother Ren couldn't stay any longer, he was also in his mother's room. My arms became restless. Seeing this, Crown Prince Jingchuan simply sat on the lawn outside the flower hall with the 2 little doubtings who didn't even know how to walk. The 3 of them played around in harmony. And he and Aunt Sue have always liked children, but it is a pity that the original children in the house have grown up over the years. Now they finally have the opportunity to get along with the children. They do not need anyone to give them orders, they just take the initiative. The task of looking after 3 little carrot heads. The flower hall was soon filled with the sounds of women chatting, accompanied by the laughter of 3 carrot heads on the lawn from time to time. Just listening to it made people feel good. Hua Yaoding and Prince Heshuo looked at each other and relaxed their expressions tacitly. After lunch, the little ones were all cheering up. The princess of Heshuo County originally wanted to leave, but Wu Qiuzao was worried that Prince Jingchuan would get winded on the way, and he had to coax Brother Ren to sleep anyway. Then he invited Princess Heshuo to his courtyard. Princess Heshuo County thought that she had not finished sharing her experience of becoming a mother with Wu Qiuzao, so she smiled and nodded and went happily. It happened that Hua Yu narrowed her eyes when she saw Xiuzhao, and followed the two of them. The missing people were found. Although it was the third prince who made the contribution, these are not worth mentioning compared with the people's safety. Prince Shuo and Hua Yaoding were both happy from the bottom of their hearts. Went to the study and played chess. Fan Qinjiao continued chatting with his grandmother and aunts, enjoying a rare moment of leisure. After dinner, Prince Heshuo headed back home. Hua Yaoding saw that it was getting dark, so he asked the porter to prepare the horses, and personally sent Prince Heshuo and his family out of the western suburbs mansion, and walked slowly towards the prince's mansion. As soon as Prince Heshuo and his wife left, Hua Yuelian and Sun Che also said goodbye. Before leaving, King Xin reluctantly stayed in Fan Qinjiao's arms and refused to come down. It was not until Fan Qinjiao put King Xin to sleep that the little girl was returned to her mother's arms as if she had been dropped. Everyone in the western suburbs mansion also spent the whole day saying goodbye to Prince Heshuo and his wife, and then returned to their own courtyard. When Fan Qinjiao returned to the yard, Mother Su had already prepared the bath water. Lying in the steaming tub, Fan Qinjiao relaxed and breathed a sigh of relief. In total, it had been a while since she received a reply from Bailey Fengming. Ever since Bailey Fengming said that Qinkai School had found something, his reply to her letters had become slower and slower. Although Fan Qinjiao didn't know what Bailey Fengming had found, Bailey Rongs now thought of inciting the people's hearts in the main city. Nanqing and Fengcheng could not find any results. If this continues, it will only be harmful to Bailey Fengming. While thinking about it, Fan Qinjiao actually fell asleep leaning against the tub. When he opened his eyes again, the water in the bathtub was a little cold. Fan Qinjiao got up and put on his clothes. Looking out the window, he saw that the lanterns at the mansion were still on. Is it because my grandfather hasn't come back yet? End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 817. Chapter 817 A Disaster from Heaven. Ninggan, what time is it? Fan Qinjiao asked. It was Ninghan who was helping Nanny Su carry the bathtub outside and said, "Miss, it's just past midnight." Fan Qinjiao remembered that when his grandfather sent Prince Heshuo away, he had just arrived in Su. Grandpa looked like he was a military commander, but in fact he was not rough-minded. Crown Prince Jingchuan was obviously sleepy when he left. Grandpa would never continue to sit at the prince's mansion in Heshuo County. Thinking about this, Fan Qinjiao stood up and walked towards the front yard. Unexpectedly, as soon as he entered the yard, he saw his grandmother walking out with the support of Aunt He. Fan Qinjiao looked at his grandmother's expression and knew that he was right. His grandfather had indeed not come back yet. I accompanied my grandmother to the door to have a look. By the way, I asked Fan Zhao to lead people to meet him on the way to his adoptive father's house. Welcome, Grandma. Tao Yuxian nodded and walked to the door of the house with Fan Qinjiao. It was Fan Zhao who was arranging the night watch. He saw the old lady and the young lady coming together, and hurriedly came over and said, "My subordinates saw that the master has not come back yet, so he sent someone to meet him on the only way." Before he could finish his words, a burst of noisy footsteps sounded from the end of the alley. Hearing the sound, Fan Zhao quickly took a lantern and looked ahead, only to see several nurses who had just been sent out running back carrying an unconscious man. As the nurses quickly approached, Fan Qinjiao subconsciously held her grandmother's arm tightly. "Grandpa is in trouble." Tao Yuxian, who also saw the situation clearly, swayed, but fortunately Fan Kinjao helped him in time, so he didn't fall to the ground. Seeing Hua Yaoding covered in blood being carried back by the nurse, he quickly gave instructions, send it to the front yard quickly. And he, hurry up and order someone to boil hot water. Fan Kinjao also hurriedly asked someone to send a message to his yard and send his medicine box to the front yard. As Hua Yaoding, who was seriously injured and unconscious, was carried to the front yard, everyone in the mansion was alarmed. When they found out that the master was injured, they hurriedly ran to the front yard. Soon, everyone gathered in the front yard. Fan Kinjao helped his grandmother into the back room. His grandfather had been placed on the soft couch. Under the candlelight, there was blood everywhere on his body, and it was impossible to tell where he was injured. Fan Kinjao hurriedly walked over and pressed his hand on his grandfather's wrist. After a long while, he said, "The pulse is quite stable." The pulse is stable, which means the root has not been damaged. Tao Yuxian took a deep breath and started to unbutton Hua Yaoding's clothes. The 3 layers inside and outside were already stained with blood. Looking at the scars on his body, there were dozens of them. The deepest part is right below the heart. If it goes a little higher, I'm afraid. Fan Kinjao's pupils trembled when he saw this. It was obviously a deadly move. But now was not the time to talk. Fan Kinjao took out a silver needle while his grandmother was suturing his grandfather's wound, and locked the blood vessels to stop the bleeding. Then he took out the life-saving safety device from the medicine box and let his grandfather hold it in his mouth. By the time the grandfather and grandson were done with everything, it would already be an hour later. Fan Kinjao saw his grandmother sitting next to his grandfather in silence, so he left the back room and went to the main hall. He looked at everyone and said, "Grandpa is fine now, but he still needs to cultivate carefully for a while. Grandpa is still here at the moment I'm unconscious, my aunts should go back and rest early, before they ruin their bodies." After hearing this, the daughters-in-law in each room knew that they could not help here much, so they might as well recharge their batteries and have a good sleep, and come back tomorrow morning to help their mother-in-law guard the front yard. Before leaving, Mu Yan looked at her third sister worriedly. It wasn't that she didn't believe in her medical skills, but she was just a little worried about her grandfather's injury. Fan Kinjao looked at Mu Yan and smiled lightly, "Go back, it's okay." Hua Fengning waited for Mu Yan to leave, then walked to Fan Kinjao and said, "Grandpa, please accompany your grandmother to take care of him. I'll go to Heshuo County Prince's mansion to see how the situation is there." Fan Kinjao just cared about his grandfather's injury. After hearing his brother's words, he nodded and said, "Okay, brother, be careful on the road." Hua Fengning touched Fan Kinjao's hair and said, "Don't worry, I'll come back to you when I get back. Peace." After Fan Kinjao watched his brother leave the front yard, he went back to his yard in person, took out a few medicinal materials from the warehouse, took them to the kitchen and cooked them before pouring them into the bowl and returned. Forecourt. In the back room, Tao Yuxian was sitting on the soft couch with his eyes closed, his hands always holding Hua Yaoding's left hand. Hearing the sound of footsteps, Tao Yuxian woke up and opened his eyes. When he saw it was Fan Kinjao, he relaxed again. Fan Kinjao handed over the medicine bowl in his hand. "It's a medicine to calm the nerves. Grandma will drink it even if she doesn't want to drink it anymore. If you go down, your body will be exhausted, and Grandpa will feel distressed again when he wakes up." Tao Yuxian knew that Xiao Kinjao was considerate, but now he really couldn't smile. He was holding the medicine bowl and sipping it one mouth at a time, and he couldn't even detect the bitterness of the medicine. "Grandma, do you know who my grandpa has had any grudges with lately?" Fan Kinjao asked softly. Tao Yuxian shook his head. After the incident on the 15th, the main city was very peaceful. In addition, the emperor handed over the incident on the 15th to the military and horse division for investigation, not to mention your grandfather. even the Prince of Heshuo County. Always being an idler. Fan Kinjao understood what his grandmother meant. Since he had become an idler, there was no way he could make enemies with others. However, the wounds on his grandfather's body were all cruel. It was obvious that he had no intention of leaving a way for his grandfather to survive. Cough cough cough, cough cough cough. A coughing sound suddenly sounded. Fan Kinjao and Tao Yuxian looked at the soft couch at the same time, and saw Hua Yaoding's eyelids moving, and then slowly opened his eyes. His weather-beaten eyes were distracted for a moment when they looked around. Fortunately, when he saw Fan Kinjao and Tao Yuxian, the light gathered again. Hua Yaoding moved his lips and asked hoarsely, "How is Prince Heshuo?" Cough cough cough. Fan Kinjao replied softly, "Grandpa, don't worry, my brother has already gone to his adoptive father, and there will be news soon." Hua Yaoding looked at Fan Kinjao and wanted to nod, but found that he couldn't move anywhere now. Tao Yuxian's eyes turned red when he saw her husband like this. "You were fine when you left. How long has it taken you to become like this? What happened?" Hua Yaoding glanced at his wife helplessly. "I guess Prince Heshuo provoked someone. Those people covered their faces, but they were very aggressive. They were all targeting Princess Heshuo and Crown Prince Jing Chuan. Go." Tao Yuxian was startled. "Are the Princess of Heshuo County and the young prince okay?" Hua Yaoding shook his head. If he hadn't protected their mother and daughter at that time, he wouldn't have been injured. He just didn't know what the situation was like on the side of Prince Heshuo. Before he fainted, he saw that Prince Heshuo was also blushing. Hearing this, Tao Yuxian felt uncomfortable asking further questions. After all, this matter had nothing to do with the Hua family. Hua Yaoding was lying down when he suddenly became hungry. Tao Yuxian was thinking about asking Nanny Su to make a bowl of soup, but Hua Yaoding took advantage of her injury and insisted on drinking sugar-watered eggs. Tao Yuxian: "I have never seen anyone with an injured appetite still have a healthy appetite." Fan Kinjao smiled and said, "Grandma, just feel free to go and leave this place to me." Tao Yuxian had no choice but to get up and walk out the door. Fan Kinjao kept watching his grandmother go out. When he turned back to look at his grandfather again, the smile on his face had long since disappeared. "Grandpa, what on earth is going on?" End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 818. Chapter 818, How old are you to fight each other? My grandfather has been on the battlefield for many years, and his observation of the enemy is very keen. Fan Kinjao never believes that his grandfather really can't see what the purpose of those people is. Especially when his grandfather obviously wanted to send his grandmother away, Fan Kinjao became even more sure of his guess. At this time, Hua Yaoding also became serious. "Although Prince Heshuo and I are still serving the court, we can't count the ministers promoted by the emperor in the past few years. To put it bluntly, Heshuo and I, the two princes, have been ignored for a long time. If they don't still have some old relationships to maintain, what difference would they make to useless people?" Fan Kinjao frowned. "So what Grandpa means is..." Hua Yaoding seemed to be smiling but not smiling. "Xiao Kinjao, when have you ever seen a disabled person still able to make enemies?" Fan Kinjao's heart skipped a beat. If it is not a personal enmity, then the only reason that may lead to death is in the court. Those people probably didn't even think about leaving a way for me and Prince Heshuo to survive, otherwise they wouldn't have attacked Princess Heshuo and Crown Prince Jing Chuan. They clearly wanted to distract us and catch us off guard." Hua Yaoding sighed. Fortunately, he and Prince Heshuo could still lift it with their old arms and legs, otherwise they would have gone to the Palace of Hell to report. "Does Grandpa have anyone to guess? Now that the third prince has performed meritorious services in the main city, it is a time for him to be in the limelight. He takes the opportunity to incite public opinion and win over the people. The purpose is just to erase the prince's impression in the hearts of the people in the main city. In this way, Heshuo County and I, the two kings, are naturally an eyesore. If the two of us who are old and ungrateful really die, the prince's position in the court will be in jeopardy. Prince Heshuo and Huayaoding have no real power in their hands, but they still have some connections after having been in the court for decades. Once something happens to them, how will the people in the court treat the prince? The most important thing is, there happened to be a thief in the main city now. No matter whether Huayaoding and Prince Heshuo were dead or not, there was no evidence that they were dead. I am afraid that those who acted quickly would shift the responsibility to those thieves. Such a vicious method is more like Bailey Wrong's style. Fan Qingjiao's heart felt cold, and the murderous aura in his eyes was steaming silently. If it was really Bailey Wrongs who did this, she, Fan Qingjiao, would definitely fight to the death. When Fan Qingjiao got up and left the front yard, his brother happened to come back from the Prince Heshuo's palace. The injuries on Prince Heshuo were not serious, but fortunately, the Princess Heshuo and the Crown Prince Jingchuan were not seriously injured. As for other matters, the heart is similar to what my grandfather analyzed. Hua Fengning has been in the officialdom after all, so he is worried. If this matter is really blamed on the thieves who made trouble, wouldn't my grandfather and Prince Heshuo still be in danger for their lives? Unless those thieves can be caught in one fell swoop, if someone can take advantage of the reputation of those thieves for the first time, there will be a second and third time. Fan Qingjiao smiled coldly. If this was really done by the third prince, he simply wanted to use the injury of his adoptive father and grandfather to send a warning to the Prince Sealings. Bailey Fengming is not in the main city now. The prince's party is naturally panic-stricken. If they are really frightened by this incident, it is normal for them to temporarily seek refuge with the third prince's party. They have poached themselves to this extent, it is really shameless. Of course Fan Qingjiao couldn't just watch Bailey Wrongs get what he wanted. He looked at his brother and said, "Excuse me, brother, I'll go to my adoptive father's place again, but this time it will be more grand." Hua Fengning was stunned. "What do you mean?" The third prince's idea of using this matter to intimidate the prince and his party is good. The injuries of his adoptive father and grandfather cannot be hidden, but as long as the reason is changed, it doesn't mean it's really irreversible. If it is true that Bailey Wrongs wants to take advantage of the situation to build momentum, it also depends on whether she will give him this opportunity. Hua Fengning's eyes turned cold when he heard this. Why didn't he think of it? It's no longer a matter of time, just do it. Hua Fengning immediately called Fan Zhao in front of him, and selected a few loud nurses to follow him to the Heshuo County Prince's mansion. Fan Qingjiao asked Ningguan to open the warehouse and select from it. I asked my brother to bring many valuable medicinal materials with him. After a stick of incense, Hua Fengning took the people, and the people brought gifts, and went to the Prince of Heshuo County in a mighty manner. Today is the Dragon Boat Festival, and the people on the street have not completely dispersed. Hua Fengning's commotion soon attracted many people to watch, and then spread the news. When Hua Fengning arrived and when he arrived at Zhuozhen Prince's mansion, the people who came to watch almost filled the street. Hua Fengning stood at the door of Heshuo County Prince's mansion, and without saying a word, he knelt on the ground. He opened and closed his mouth to ask Heshuo County Prince to forgive his grandfather's recklessness. With the support of the nursing home next to him, the people listened. Listen, listen. They were all shocked. So this means that Prince Heshuo and the old general of the Hua family, one thinks his son is good, and the other thinks his grandson is great, and neither of them obeys the other, so why don't you just hold the sword and I hold the sword? Although the people thought this matter was a bit ridiculous, many people saw it with their own eyes when Prince Heshuo went to his mansion in the western suburbs today. Moreover, when Prince Heshuo and the old general of the Hua family were comparing their children and grandchildren, they were standing at the door of the mansion. Some people also heard it. The common people connected together the whole story they knew, and then looked at the young master of the Hua family who was kneeling at the door of Heshuo County Prince's mansion, apologizing to Heshuo County Prince. There is absolutely no reason not to believe it. It was Prince Heshuo who was recuperating in the mansion when he heard the commotion outside. He glanced at Princess Heshuo and understood what was going on. Since he wanted to pretend, he had to pretend to be presentable. Soon and Princess Shuojun came forward in person, firstly to support Hua Fengning and sing the whole drama, and secondly to break the news that both Prince Shuojun and Hua Yaoding were injured. The common people were really shocked when they heard the conversation between Princess Heshuo and the eldest young master of the Hua family. So, not only did Prince Heshuo have a disagreement with the old general of the Hua family, they discussed swords in Huashan. In the end, they were both seriously injured and bedridden. Soon, the news spread throughout the main city. When they went to court the next day, they were shocked to see Prince Heshuo and Hua Yaoding asking for leave one after another. Not only did they get into a fight over a verbal dispute, but they also ended up sending each other to bed. Can you still be more successful? Although it is not a glorious thing to fight and seriously injured each other, it is impossible for whoever wants to promote the development of this matter behind the scenes. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 819. Chapter 819. The fifth prince vomited blood. But let's just forget about it, Fan Kinjao doesn't have such a kind heart. In the past few days, after the people in the main city gradually turned their attention away from this matter, Fan Kinjao sent Lanja to the third prince's mansion. As long as it is a fox, it will always show its tail. Bailey wrongs it's best to burn incense and pray now, and don't have anything to do with him. Until he had no more definite evidence, Fan Kinjao continued to follow his own pace, reading medical books in the mansion every day, and then went to the Bingma division to diagnose and treat the fifth prince. On this day, Fan Kinjao got on the carriage early. Finding it all together, after detoxifying the fifth prince again today, he should wake up. With this thought in mind, Fan Kinjao quickened her pace a little after getting off the carriage, but as soon as she arrived at the backyard, she saw a guard running over in a hurry. "Crown Princess, you are finally here, the fifth prince is vomiting blood." Fan Kinjao was shocked and hurriedly carried the medicine box and walked inside. At this time, there were quite a few people standing in the room. The guards who usually took turns to serve the fifth prince were all kneeling on the ground. Bailey Rong stood beside the bed with a serious look on his face. When he saw Fan Kinjao entering, he said hurriedly, "You are finally here, fifth emperor brother." Before Bailey Rongs could finish his words, Fan Kinjao walked around him and squatted beside the bed, carefully diagnosing and treating the fifth prince. Bailey Rongs. Fan Kinjao had no time to look at Bailey Rong's expression now. As the pulse under his fingertips became weaker and weaker, Fan Kinjao's expression darkened. "This is poisoned. And it is obvious that the poison the fifth prince is poisoned now is the same poison as the poison he was poisoned at the beginning. In that case, the person who wanted to kill the fifth prince got into the army and horses department. In other words, that person was originally in the military and horse division. Princess, why on earth did the fifth emperor's brother vomit blood?" Bailey Rong's voice suddenly sounded in his ears. "It's just that after taking the medicine for too long, the body has inevitably restrained the medicine. It's all my negligence. I should have informed you in advance." Thoughts in his heart were spinning fiercely, but Fan Kinjao didn't show any signs of it on his face. Of expression. No matter who the person who poisoned the fifth prince was, now is not the time to reveal the truth. Since that person dared to poison, he had no intention of letting the fifth prince wake up alive. If Fan Kinjao said what he said now, it would easily cause the fifth prince to die again. Bailey Rong seemed a little unconvinced. Is it really just rejection? If the Third Highness cannot trust me, you can ask the imperial physician in the palace to come and take your pulse. Or, the Third Highness can directly advise the emperor and ask the emperor to change someone else to diagnose and treat the fifth prince. When Fan Kinjao spoke, his palms were full of blood. Sweated. Only by temporarily letting others know that she saw no signs of the fifth prince being poisoned, would the poisoner be fooled into thinking that she was successful, and in this way could the temporary safety of the fifth prince be ensured. Seeing what Fan Kinjao said, Bailey Rongs hurriedly pulled back. What the crown princess said is too serious. If you go by seniority, you still want to call me third emperor brother. We are all one family. Is there any reason not to trust my brothers and sisters? Bailey Rongs is still the poisonous snake who is good at disguise. If people don't know his true face, they will just think that he is such a kind and pure existence. However, Fan Kinjao did not have the habit of self-abuse. In order to prevent himself from vomiting out the overnight meal, he directly issued an eviction order. Please leave first, Your Highness. I have to treat the fifth prince. Bailey Rongs. Is he so annoying? Bailey Rongs just couldn't figure it out. As a prince, who wouldn't be eager for that chair? There were many people who wanted to win that chair, and he was just one of them. Moreover, he had to be powerful to be able to. The fight has been going on until this point. The winner is the king and the loser is the bandit. This is normal human nature. Why did you end up here with Fan Kinjao? He seemed to be a heinous bastard? Yes, he and the prince are from two different camps, but whether it is with the prince or with other people, he can take the initiative to maintain superficial relationships. Why is Fan Kinjao unwilling to say even one more word to her? However, Bailey Rongs had long been accustomed to Fan Kinjao's cold demeanor. In order not to be blamed for delaying the fifth prince's diagnosis and treatment, he had to take someone out first. Fan Kinjao just stared at Bailey Rongs' back. It wasn't until he led the people out of the yard that he loosened the hands that had been clenched in his sleeves, turned around, quickly took out the silver needle, and looked for it. Needles were placed on several acupuncture points on the fifth prince's body, and he breathed a sigh of relief after all the toxins in his body were controlled. Just when he raised his head, Fan Kinjao vaguely saw that the fifth prince's right hand was still clenched. She always diagnoses the pulse with her left hand, but she never pays attention to it. Fan Kinjao frowned and used the method of pricking acupoints with silver needles to relax the nerves in the fifth prince's right hand. As the 5 fingers that were always clenched slowly opened, something fell out. It is a purse. But it was enough to make Fan Kinjao's pupils tremble. In Ziliang, purses are not very personal items for ordinary people, but for people of high status, they are extremely private. It is just something hanging on the waist, and it does not hinder the identity of the wearer. You can't check it carefully. If you look too much, it will be against the rules. As for the items worn by the princes, ordinary people are not allowed to see them. They are all descendants of dragons and phoenixes. People must bow their heads when they see the princes. Fan Kinjao would not be able to recognize other purses, but she had the memory of her previous life, so she could tell at a glance that this purse belonged to Bailey Rongs. When Bailey Rongs wore it on her body, he deceived her and said it was a casual purchase. Later she learned that it was actually Fan Swinning who secretly embroidered it for Bailey Rongs. In this life, Fan Swinning has already become Bailey Rongs. My aunt, what does it mean to embroider a purse? Fan Kinjao picked up the purse and held it carefully in his hand. His heart felt cold. Originally, she only thought that the fifth prince's injury was an accident. Now it seems that she thought wrong from the beginning. But now that the fifth prince was unconscious, Fan Kinjao did not dare to really guess whether the fifth prince discovered the purse, or whether Bailey Rongs deliberately put it in his hands to plan a new trap. After thinking about it, Fan Kinjao opened the medicine box again. It is true that the fifth prince is in a coma, but it is not true that he will not speak. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 820. Chapter 820. I was so angry that I stood up. Fan Kinjao stayed by the side of the fifth prince for a while, then got up and got on the carriage entering the palace. Now that Bailey Fengming was not in the main city, she had to discuss many things with the queen. In Fenji Palace, Queen Zhen 11 had been thinking about what happened to Prince Heshuo and Hua Yaoding on the Dragon Boat Festival. However, it was just the time when the storm was coming, so it was inconvenient for her to do anything to attract more attention. Now the situation has finally calmed down. She was thinking about asking Lily to go to the western suburbs mansion to spread the news, but she didn't expect Fan Kinjao to come on his own initiative. Fan Kinjao entered the door and saw Queen Zhengzi waving to her. There is no one else who comes to sit next to me without those false courtesy. Fan Kinjao knew that the queen was different from concubine Yu. If the queen said she didn't need to salute, it was because she really didn't want her to be so polite, so she just sat down next to the queen obediently. Queen Zhen 11 looked around Fan Kinjao carefully first. Seeing that he was still in good spirits, she asked, "Have you found out anything about your grandfather and your adoptive father?" When Fan Kinjao heard this, he knew that the empress did not believe that her grandfather and her adoptive father were fighting each other. Fortunately, Lily had sent all the palace people away in advance, so it was convenient for her to speak now. That is, what happened that day was explained to the queen in detail. Queen Zhengzi. Those who were so angry stood up. When I first heard the news, I felt something was wrong, but I never expected that things would turn out like this. A group of insidious and ruthless dogs are really getting more and more aggressive. Since meeting the queen, Fan Kinjao has never seen the queen lose her composure. It can be seen that she is really angry. Thinking like this, she doesn't know what to say. Seeing Fan Kinjao hesitate to speak, Queen Zhen 11 knew that she was frightened. She took a deep breath, then sat down and said, "But have you found out who did it?" Fan Kinjao shook his head. "Although I have some suspicions, I haven't got any evidence yet." Queen Zhen 11 sighed, "I know that you have always been calm. During this time, Fengming is not in the main city, and some people have set their sights on other places. Don't worry, once this matter is decided, I will definitely not let it go." Fan Kinjao nodded. She naturally believed what the queen said. "Mother, actually I came here today because I have one more thing to say." As Fan Kinjao said, he handed Bailey Rong's purse to the empress, and took the opportunity to tell him everything about today's Bingma division. Read it again. In fact, Fan Kinjao had already had doubts about the fifth prince. However, recent frequent incidents had made the empress very anxious. In order to prevent the empress from being distracted and worried again, she had not said anything. But now, it's impossible not to say "I'm afraid." Queen Zhen 11 looked at the purse in her palm and her heart skipped a beat. "Do you think this matter has something to do with the third child?" Fan Kinjao heard this but did not nod immediately. Of course she believed that Bailey Rong's wallet would never appear out of thin air in the fifth prince's hands. But she had to think more deeply. What if Bailey Rong's had put it in this purse? If Bailey Rong's purpose is to seduce her into doubting him, and then make the matter bigger, and finally Bailey Rong's bites her back, what will she do? The two people were talking when Lily walked in and said, "Queen, Princess Yunyu is here." Queen Zhen 11 and Fan Kinjao looked at each other. Although they didn't expect Yunyu to come at this time, it was hard to drive them away directly on this sunny day. "Let someone come in." Empress Zhen 11 stuffed the purse into her sleeve. Not long after, Yunyu walked through the door. She probably didn't expect Fan Kinjao to be there. After being stunned for a moment, she knelt on the ground and greeted the queen. "My son, please give my regards to the queen." May the queen be blessed and safe. Zhen, the former queen, smiled vainly and quickly asked Lily to sit down. Why are you so free today? Yunyu sat on the chair with a sweet smile. It's not easy for me to return to the palace this time, and I don't know when I left. Naturally, I want to visit my mother more often when I have time. My mother has always regarded us as her own children, and now when we are older, it is natural for us to be filial to our mother. Fan Kinjao. If nothing else, Yunyu's mouth is really sweet. It is said that raising children requires raising sons, but I just like daughters. Daughters know how to care for people. Fortunately, I still have Yunyu and Kinjao by my side. It would be better if I were surrounded by those brats all day long. Sooner or later, I am afraid that they will me off to death. Queen Zhen 11 seemed to be very impressed by Yunyu's words, but at the end of her words, she turned the conversation to Fan Kinjao. The meaning of this is clearly to remind Yunyu that she has guests here now and has no time to accompany Yunyu to chat here. Yunyu was secretly surprised when she heard this. Fan Kinjao is a daughter-in-law, how can she be compared with her as a princess? She knew that the queen had always loved Fan Kinjao, but she didn't expect that she could really love her to such an extent. If other people had been so hinted and compared, they would have probably stood up and left long ago, but Yunyu just sat still, and even took the initiative to cast her eyes on Fan Kinjao. I don't know why today, but I just wanted to come and visit mother. I didn't expect that the crown princess would come by such a coincidence. It's considered fate. Fate. Is it the fate of being thrown into the lake? Fan Kinjao really admired Yunyu for being able to pretend to be ignorant and play with understanding to such a proficient level. It was like throwing her and Fan swimming into the lake last time was a dream. However, facing the cheerful face of Princess Yunyu, Fan Kinjao also had a smile on his face. I am lucky to have such a predestined relationship with Princess Yunyu. You can pretend to be in the first grade of junior high school, and I can pretend to be the 15th grader. Isn't it just pretending, as if no one can do it? Yunyu looked at Fan Kinjao's smiling face, feeling furious in her heart. She even pushed her into the lake a few days ago, but now she seems to be alright. No matter how much she hates her in her heart, Yunyu still has a warm look on her face. The crown princess is just polite, we are all a family. If you are so polite again, the queen mother will be angry. Not only do you want to drag Fan Kinjao, but you also want to drag the queen in for a chat? Fan Kinjao looked at Yunyu's lively look with a smile, always feeling that Yunyu had some ulterior secrets in her visit to Fenji Palace. Just at this time, Lily entered the door with two maids. The two maids held a soup cup in their hands. One was placed in front of Queen Zhen 11, and the other was placed on the wooden table beside Fan Kinjao. There was no Yunyu. This is a bit embarrassing. End of this chapter.